Okay, so I have the recording on. I'll see if we can record it and share it, but I think that'll be determined a little bit later on. So back to the demo with regards to using Tableau Public. Essentially, the way that it works is that you can just hop online to Tableau, just on Google, you just type in download Tableau Public. And I can see if I can stop my screen share and just show you real quick. Just one moment. All right, so I didn't want to share any personal information. So essentially there's a question of how to download Tableau Public. So essentially you can just go onto Google, type in Tableau Public download, and go onto their official website. Just click download now. And essentially what you do is you type in your email address, click download the app. And then when you're downloading the app, essentially what you'll have is just the regular download icon here. You'll open it up and it'll be downloaded onto your desktop computer, in which case you can just open up Tableau and you'll get to your just the Tableau Public user interface. And when you open it up, essentially what you'll be working with in terms of the Tableau user interface is this kind of display and layout. So say that we want to connect to data. We have our data pane located right over here. So we can simply connect to data by clicking on this button here. And then we get to this start page that shows various different data sources. So for instance, like I mentioned before, Tableau Public is able to connect to a wide host of data sources. So for instance, you have Microsoft Excel, you have text files, JSON files, PDF files. You can also connect to servers. With Tableau Public, you also have some data sources that are saved, and you can use some sample data sources. For instance, a sample superstore data. So that's what we'll be using today. So that's just what I'm going to click on. And then once we connect to our data source, we can see that it opens up in here. Now, if we really want to look into all of the data that Tableau brings in, we can go to our data source just down here, click on data source, and we can see our data in much more detail. So for instance, we can see our sample superstore data, that's just the title of our data set. It's located up here. And then all of the different sheets that are within this file are located right over here. So we have orders, people, returns, just right over here. And previously I mentioned that if you're working with various different data sources or just our tables, Tableau is able to combine that data. So you can combine it through creating relationships, joining data, using union, and then there was one more, blending data. And so within this case, what Tableau has done is that it's imported the data and it's created a relationship. So it's automatically detected detected the relationship between the three different tables. So between orders and people and orders and returns. And the way that it shows this is by creating this, it's called a noodle. So it just essentially connects the different tables together. And so we won't be going into combining data today just because, due to time. So what we can just quickly show is our different data just located down here. So this is all of our data for our orders table. If you double click on people, you can access all of the data for located under person. And then we can go backwards and we can click on returns and we can see all of the data located here. We'll mainly be working with the orders table. So we'll just be double clicking on that just to see what it's made up of. So right over here, we have all of our data, and this is just a little snapshot of the data that we have. So I mentioned before that Tableau is able to detect the data types. So you can see here through these little icons, the different data types that Tableau has auto-detected the data for. So this ABC is the text string. You have this little calendar icon, which is just the date. Another calendar icon. You have some string or text types. And then you have a little globe that demonstrates geographical information, which is what we'll be working with today. So essentially, it auto detects that it's geographic location based on the fact that we are working with countries, cities, states, so on. If we scroll over, we'll see a numbers sign. So that just shows that we're working with data, which can be either whole values or decimal values. So that's just a little recap of the data. So we'll be working with something called the sample superstore data, and we'll be working with product information as well as customer information, location of various different stores, and we can also say we have sales, profit, and so forth. So having said that, that's just a brief overview of our data source. So say that we want to start building up our visualizations. We can go to our first sheet. And so what we mentioned is that we have three methods. We have a worksheet, we have a dashboard, as well as a story. So I'll briefly be going through the three different methods. So in opening up the worksheet, we have our data pane located over here. So it stores all of our data. So if we close these up, we can see that we have all of our three tables, which it's been imported. So we have orders table, we have our people, returns. We'll be working with orders, so we'll just open that up. And we can see that our data is already segregated automatically into dimensions, which are discrete values, as well as measures. So these are our or quantitative values. So for instance, profit and sales. And then over here, we have our filters card and our marks card. So filters, we'll see how this works. It allows you to filter your data. Marks card allows you to add the context that we mentioned. Let's see how that works. We have columns and rows. So I mentioned that with the columns and the rows, the way essentially that Tableau displays visualizations is by dragging and dropping these dimensions and measures onto columns and rows. Other ways to do it are simply double clicking whichever attribute you want to select. You can drag it and drop it onto your overall field here, which is where we'll be building our visual. And then lastly, just as an introduction, we have the Show Me tab, and these were the available visualizations. So you can see that when you hover over them, they're grayed out now just because we haven't selected any fields. Essentially, when you hover over them, you can see that they have specifications in order to build the different visualizations. So you need 0 or more dimensions or 2 measures in order to create a bullet graph. For an area chart, it's best to use 0 more dimensions, but you at least need 1 measure. So for instance, let's take a look at, let's open up product, and let's take a look at the different categories we have available within our data set. So we can simply take our category, drop it into columns, and we can see we have a simple table that's automatically generated. And let's say we want to look at sales. We can take sales and simply drop it into rows. And now we have a simple bar chart. So we have category by sales, and we have our different categories. So we have furniture, office, and I believe, yes, technology. And so with regards to, and so when we also hover over every specific bar, we can also see additional information. So we can see the category as well as the sales. So office supplies, sales of $7.19, and so on. So this is the tooltip, just this little bit that I mentioned before. So it just adds additional information. So like I mentioned, we have an auto-generated visualization. You can modify this visualization using filters, marks, and various other methods. So say that we wanted to create a stacked bar, we can simply click on that, and then it doesn't really tell us much, but we have that option. We can also create a pie chart, and then we can hover over the different sections and it'll tell us different office supplies and so on. So we'll just go back to here. If we want to take away this visualization, the way you do it is you just simply drag and drop it away from the rows and the columns, and it simply disappears. Okay, so now that we have a general layout of the land, we'll briefly go over creating the worksheets, dashboards, and stories that in order to just display some of the data that we have within our Superstore. So in looking at this information, we can see that we have customer name, location, which is subdivided into country, region, state, city, postal code. We have order date, order ID, as well as product, which has subcategories. You have category, subcategory, manufacturer, product name, the list goes on. So these are our discrete values. Then we have discount, profit, quantity, sales as our measures. So what we want to take a look at today is look at sales and profit according to across the different states. So in order to do this, what we'll do is we'll create a geographical map. And it's a bit easier than it sounds. Essentially what you do is, since we want to look at sales and profit by state, the first step will be to rename our sheet. So we'll just rename this as, we'll double click here, rename it as sales and profit by state. Click enter, and we can see that our name has also been altered up here. So to create our map, the first thing that we do is we simply drag out states. So we'll drag it out onto our view, and we'll just wait a second. And we can see that Tableau automatically creates a map for us. And so it locates every single state that we have information for. So we can zoom out of our map, see the additional information, and so on. So our concern is to look at sales and profits. So we'll go back into our table and we'll select that information. So what we want to do is, we'll zoom back in. We want to label every single state with sales. So in order to do this, we can use our marks card. So today we'll be using color as well as label. We already do have detail, so it essentially just tells you the state information. So we'll go into sales, we'll take it, we'll drag it out, and we'll plop it into label. And so what we can see is that Tableau automatically sums up all of the sales for every single state, and we can see all of the sales per state. So as we hover over every point, we see that we have, like for instance, Arkansas is 11.6K and so on. Now, in order to show our profit, what we want to do is do the same thing. But what we'll do is, instead of having additional information just printed out per state, we'll color code it according to our profit. So we'll just close this up just to see it better. And we'll do the same thing. So we'll take profit and we'll input it into color. And now we have our states colored by profit. And we have an auto-generated legend over here. Yellow colors indicate loss in profit with negative values. Darker blue, higher profit. Just one moment. Okay, so I do have one question. Yes, it can work across, this question is, can it work in Russia? Yes, Tableau can work anywhere, I believe. Okay, so going back into our demo. So let's say that we want to analyze this data. So we recreated a map, we have our states, we have our sales and profit. So let's take a look at what this means. So if we look at our sales first, one thing that I wanted to also mention is we want to filter this data. So we'll make use of the filters card. We want to filter it so that we're just looking at data for the year 2020. So we'll go into our data over here. We'll click on order date and we will drag it on out to filters card. And we can filter our fields according to years, quarters, months, days. What we want is to select the years. So we'll click years, click next. Select the year 2020, click OK. And now we have our sales data for the year 2020. Okay, so now let's see what this data means. So in terms of sales, what we can see is that California, as well as New York, as well as Texas, has the highest sales. But if we look at the profit, we can see that while these three do have the highest sales, Texas, for some reason, while it's doing well in sales, overall in profit, it's not doing too well. It's actually losing profit. So one way that we can examine this is by specifically looking into Texas. So one thing we can do is look at maybe the products that they're selling, see how well the products are doing, and see if there's some sort of pattern in terms of sales or profit in the products in Texas. So let's create a new worksheet and create a second visualization. So this will be our last visualization we'll be creating today, and it'll be a simple bar chart. So in creating this bar chart, in order to kind of see what's going on in Texas, what we can do is create our second sheet. We'll rename this as product sales and profit for Texas. Enter. We have our name change up here, and we'll start to build out our next visualization. So what we want to examine is our product information. So we'll go into here, into our data. We'll select our product categories, and we'll see how sales are doing in terms of categories. So we'll drag it into our columns, and we want to fill this information with sales. We'll go back in here. We'll select our sales, drag and drop it into our rows, and we can see we have an auto-generated bar chart. So we have every single category. So we have furniture, office supplies, and technology, and we have our sales. So let's say we also want to, say that this isn't enough information. We want to look into more detail. We can actually look at the subcategory and get more information. So we can select subcategory, drag it into our columns, and now we have every single category up here. So we have furniture, office supplies, and technology. And then we have subcategories per category. So we have bookcases, chairs, furnishings, as well as tables for furniture, and so on and so forth. So this is all of our total sales across all of our states over all the years. We mentioned we want to look at the year 2020 as well as Texas. So we want to filter this data. So it's the same process as before. What we do is go into order dates, drag it into filters card. We will select years since we're looking at the year 2020, click next. We will select 2020, click OK. We see that it's modified a bit. And then we also want to filter out all of this data since it collects data for all the states, and we just want to select Texas. So we'll take state. We will want to filter this data and only pull out Texas, so we'll pull it into our filters card. And we will select Texas. This is just a list of all of the states that we have available. So we will find Texas, and same as before, we'll select what we want, which is just this one state. We'll click OK, and the data is modified. So just as before, we want to see both sales and profit. So in order to pull out more information in terms of the profit aspect, we'll go back into our data, and we can, for instance, take our profit and go into color, and this will color all of our data, create that auto-generated legend with red indicating a negative profit, light blue indicating a higher profit. So if we look at this data, in summary, what we have is we have the year 2020, we filtered it into just looking at Texas, and we're looking at the sales, a sum of sales, as well as sum of profit. So we have the sales here, and we have each of our bars color-coded in terms of profit. So we can really see the depth of information we can get from Tableau, and this is just starting to scratch the surface. Say that we look into the data, we can see binders are not doing well. Well, this entire category over here, or this subset of the overarching office supplies category, is not doing too well in terms of sales. And if we also look into the profit, since it's darker red over here, we can also see that binders aren't doing too well either. So binders are at negative 2,207. And then we have also appliances also at a negative value. So we can see that we can just provide additional detail in terms of the various different categories, subcategories that are doing, and maybe make some sort of inferences with maybe why Texas isn't doing so well in terms of sales and profit. There might be other reasons going into this, but we won't be going into that today just because this is a 1-hour session. So just to quickly show you the brief overview of the dashboards and the stories. I mentioned before that these worksheets, which is what we've been working with, they only display one visualization. So in order to kind of look back and forth, you just need to go back and forth between your visualizations. A better way to do this is by creating a dashboard. So you can right click here and you can create a new dashboard, and this will bring you up to this new canvas. And with this is called a dashboard, just located right over here. You can change the size just because it is going to be a bit crammed once we start working with it. You can, just for the sake of the visualization, just to see everything, we'll just expand our canvas size so we can see we have a minimum size set. If we click the upwards arrow, we can increase the width and we can increase our canvas size just to make it easier to see our data. So that should be okay. And the way that we create a dashboard is by using drag and drop features once more. So what we do is we can just drag and drop our different worksheets, which are stored right over here on the left. So if we hover over, we can see our sales and profit, which was our map. And we can see our bar chart, which then further dove into the different product categories and subcategories in Texas. So the way that it works is you simply drag your feature out, drop it in here, and then you can drag out your second sheet and you can have a side-by-side visualization. So we'll drag it out like so. And then you can just shift these around. You can change the sizing of it all and so on. I believe this would be a better idea. You can move these around. We'll try shifting this guy over here. Okay, so now we can see that with the dashboard, we have a better visualization of being able to simply see our data side by side. You don't have to go flipping around to different worksheets in order to draw out the information that you want to see. Okay, and then lastly, what we have is just showing you what a story looks like. Oh, and then just as a small recap, there's so many different ways that you can modify this visualization. So you can add text, images, web pages, and just a host of other ways. You can select specific states. So if you click on Texas, you can just keep Texas, clicking keep only, and we can see that we're looking at the information for Texas, and that is our little preview of our subcategories or categories and how they're doing. So we don't really want that right now, so we'll just go back to our other dashboard, and we will be creating our story. So we'll right-click down here, and we will select create a new story, and we'll see what this means. So when we create a story, essentially this is a way to create a narrative. So say that you want to share your data with somebody and explain kind of what's going on, and you want to create some sort of story or narrative and kind of explain specific worksheets and just kind of move through your data at your own pace. The way that you can do it is by creating a story, and you create stories with story points. So we have our first little canvas that we're working with, and the way that we do this is by dragging and dropping our sheets, just the same as we did with dashboards. So we have our various different sheets. We also have our dashboard if we would like. Today we'll just be using our worksheets. So you simply take your sales and profit map, drop it on here, and then we can add a caption. And so we can just label this as sales and profit by state. And we have our first story point. And then we can create our next story point by either duplicating it. If we duplicate it, it simply just creates an exact copy. Say that we want to really emphasize we're talking about Texas here. We can do what we can highlight it like we did before by clicking on it and clicking keep only. So by doing that, we can further our story, and then we can move on to our third story point by clicking on blank. And we can create, oh, sorry, I forgot. We should probably rename this to Texas. So sales and profit for Texas. Okay, we'll go on to our third story point, and we'll pull in our product information. Okay, so now we have our product information. We can add a caption. So we'll do product sales and profit for Texas. And now we have our story. We can label our story as, let's say, product sales and profit analysis. You can modify this by, for instance, by bolding it, centering it. You can change the color if you'd like. So let's do, for instance, blue. Click OK, and we have a modified title. So having said all of that, just as a quick recap, for our story, this is just a way to create a narrative in order to share your data. So if you're to share, your goal was to share product sales and profit analysis, you found that there's something going on in Texas, you can display your data as such by, for instance, first off, going into explaining sales and profit, showing how each state is doing. Then you're really homing in on Texas, showing that there might be some sort of issue in terms of profit. Then you can further display the specific details of the categories, subcategories, and just sales and profit going on in that specific state that you're working with. So that's just a general overview of how to create a story. So as I mentioned before, you can modify these visualizations in countless ways. Tableau really allows you to display data as you want it to. And as we've seen, we have a lot of information in working with these worksheets, with these dashboards and stories, and we were able to do so in a really quick way. And this is just begins to scratch the surface of what we can do with Tableau. Okay, so having said all of that, if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. I don't see any questions right now, but we will be ending our webinar soon. So I'll just go back to our slides. Okay, so I do see a question. So with regards to the data source, I'll just go into Tableau Public. So with our data source, this is essentially, I think we went through this a little bit previously, but this was our data source that we were working with. We were working mainly with the orders data. So this is the data this is how our data source looks like. So we have the order ID, order date, ship mode. There's a lot of information here. We, of course, didn't work with all of this data. We really wanted to select on few attributes. Yeah, so this is what our data source looks like. So you have different data types located up here. You have, just one moment. I think I see another question. Okay, so I see a few different questions. So during the presentation, so with this, you'd have to, for the stories and the dashboards, you can save it. When you do save it, you save it up to like Tableau, the online version of Tableau for everybody who's working Tableau Public to see it. So it'll be a little bit different than how you see it here. You'd have to log on to Tableau Public and show how it works over there. But I do believe that Tableau Public does have a lot of different dashboards and stories available to the public that you can look at and see the different visualizations that other people have created, and they go even more in depth than we've been able to go to today. Let's see. There's a question with regards to forwarding the presentation for follow-up. I can see if I can forward the presentation. That should be no problem. With regards to, there's a question asking which one's better, Tableau or Power BI, if they're completely different or any similarities. I'd say, so both Tableau and Power BI are very powerful ways to demonstrate data. So with regards to, they work very similarly in the sense that Power BI has a way to analyze data and really clean and shape data, and then a separate way to visualize the data. I'd say if you learn one, you can pick up the other one fairly quickly. And I'd say Tableau is probably a bit easier than Power BI to learn. But both are honestly very good tools to be able to use. Can we import data from Excel? Yep, so you can import data from many different sources. So we can go back to, let's say that we want to connect to a new data source. We can go up to new data, select new data source, and here we can see that we can connect to a file. So we can connect to Microsoft Excel, text files, JSON files, PDF files, connect to servers. We have our sample data sources. So you can connect to so many different data types. For Tableau, do we need to know MySQL, VBA, or Access? I don't believe so. At least for the data visualization, I don't think you need to know that. You don't really need to have really a technical background. There are ways that you can create calculations, which are fairly basic, so I don't feel like you need to know MySQL, VBA, or Access. Okay. All right, so let me just see if there are any other questions. Oh, one thing that I did forget to mention, which will play into the question that we do have here, is that say that we want to modify our sales and our maps. One way that we can do so is by, for instance, say we want to change the color palette, we double click sum and profit legend. We can select blue teal, click OK. Now, if we go to our dashboard, what we can see is that our dashboard automatically is changed too. So that kind of plays into one question earlier. So it was, do stories and dashboards get updated automatically if worksheets are modified? So we can see that, yeah, they do get modified. And so, sorry, I'm just moving around the questions and answers. So they do get modified in the dashboards. And then when we go into stories, we can see they're also automatically updated. Okay. Yes, so you can create calculated fields using Tableau. Can we share the dashboard? Yes, you can share dashboards. Usually when you say the dashboard, it's shared to all Tableau public users. So that's one note to say is if you have private information, you're using Tableau public. May not be a good idea. You might want to use Tableau desktop, but that is a paid version. When we're creating a geographical chart, what is generated in the longitude? So with regards to the latitude and longitude, so this is just a way that, so it auto detects where the geographical data is located. So in terms of, so if you have just the name, like the state names, it's able to detect on an actual map. So if you scroll out here, you can see that we have all of the countries everywhere. So it's able to automatically detect the latitude and longitude in terms of the location and being able to locate it on the map automatically. Let's see some other questions. So these are really great questions. We are running a little bit out of time. So just for the sake of things, I will just be ending the presentation soon enough. So I'm just going to be going back to our slides so I can finish up and hopefully get through any last minute questions. So just as a follow-up, so we do have a follow-up session, which will be coming in the following weeks. So as of right now, what we are showing is that on our meetup page, what you'll see is if you keep an eye out on it, we have the website located right here. We will be providing a complete in-depth introduction to Tableau. I know that it was a very brief overview. There's a lot to learn it with just visualization in Tableau. Except this one, unfortunately, will not be a free version just because it will be live, it'll be interactive. We'll have our Zoom camera, so if you'd like, you can feel free to speak up. There's hands-on learning, which includes assignments, which we'll be doing throughout the webinar. And it's a complete and thorough introduction to building and customizing your own visualizations. So the way that we'll be showing this follow-up introduction to Tableau is we'll be promoting it on our meetup page. So that's just the website here. We also do have an Eventbrite page. So we'll just be sending the link over to you guys. If you want to sign up, it'll be, I believe we'll be doing a 4-hour session for $50 in a few weeks from now in the month of June. So we'll explain in detail kind of what you can expect in terms of that. But again, it'll be a full depth introduction to Tableau, interactive. You can ask questions, work on the assignments throughout the entire session. And yeah, hopefully it'll be a good turnout. Will it be a weekend session? We typically host them during the weekdays. The time is yet to be determined. If you guys do have any specific times that would be preferable in terms of, for instance, starting at like 12 o'clock or starting later on in the afternoon, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll just send over my email so you guys can contact me. I'll just put it in the chat for everybody. Okay, so I put in my email into the chat. So it will most likely be a weekday session. The timing is yet to be determined. Usually we do host them at 12 o'clock. But yeah, if anybody has any specific concerns with regards to the timing of it, just let me know and we'll try to be as accommodating as we can just so that it works with most people's schedules. But that's generally the time that we usually do it at. And it'll most likely be within the next following weeks, it will be in the week of June. So just keep your eye out. We'll be sending out some emails with some information and so on. LinkedIn. So we do have a LinkedIn account. You can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn too. I'll just type in my name. So feel free to reach out to me for LinkedIn. Happy to chat with everybody. So yes, you have my email, you have my LinkedIn. You can feel free to send out an email to my email with any concerns or questions about the upcoming introduction to webinar, what else you'd like to see in terms of the webinars that we offer on Meetup page. And so since it is 1 o'clock, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out today. It was a great session and I hope that everybody enjoyed it, and have a great rest of the weekend, everybody. Thank you everyone for coming out.